The past 2 years have been an absolute feast for gamers, with awesome games that just added to our already huge backlog of games we need to play. And 2025 is already shaping out to be yet another great year for games with expected potential for releases like Path of Exile 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, Fable, Doom, The Dark Ages, Elden Ring, Night Rain, and so many more others. But what I want to talk about in this video are not the usual suspects, but some of the lesser known or maybe lesser talked about games many other people may not still even know about that are still in development, and if my dreams do come true, are potentially slated for public or early access release in 2025 that I'm certainly looking to get my hands on as soon as possible. First on my list is Alkahest, a first-person action-adventure RPG that blends melee combat with in-game environments. The 40-some developers of Push-On, who are based in the Republic of Cyprus, unveiled their project in late June 2024, citing Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, Dishonored, and Kingdom Come Deliverance as key inspirations for their new project. Alkahest also gives me major Goblin Slayer vibes for those who've watched that anime. The plot outlines that you are the youngest son of a petty lord that's definitely no hero until you have to prove so through sweat and blood by clashing with mysterious goblin raids on the border. Not only does Alkahest promise castles, forests, villages, and other medieval fantasy settings that will see to elements of both free exploration and guided exploration, it also promises a story involving personal drama, factions, politics, and characters you can make interesting decisions with. While no real gameplay has been shown yet, the developers have noted the gameplay will consist of aggressive stealth play, combo moves, non-linearity in tackling tasks, usage of gadgets, and using environment assets like dropping trees on goblins or just kicking them off a cliff. The goblins and other enemies will also purportedly adapt dynamically to what you are doing by running away, regrouping, or even setting up ambushes specifically for you. The game engine for this has been confirmed to be Unity, according to one of the developers for Alkahest. Interestingly, there will be no magic system in Alkahest, and instead there will be an alchemy system where you can follow recipes or create your own recipes to make concoctions that are flammable, a buff for your weapon, or something you can drink yourself with unpredictable outcomes. Now, when does this game come out? No one knows, and after I joined their official Discord server, it doesn't seem like they've made any recent announcement whatsoever in regard to a potential release date, though one of the developers commented that they will announce the release window when they are ready, but maybe we'll see some news in 2025. Second on my list is Kingmakers. I think the first time I saw something about this game was a random clip on Twitter back in early 2024, and ever since then I couldn't stop thinking about the trailer where you basically go back in time with your car and modern military weaponry to demolish medieval armies. I'm sure some of us have wondered what would happen if we time traveled to bring tanks or 50 caliber guns to bear against pre-19th century militaries. I think the closest to these imaginings have been some Rick and Morty episodes or the Gate anime. To actually play this imagination is something I am unreasonably excited about. The really intriguing thing about Kingmakers, judging from the gameplay trailers, is that it's not just a run-and-gun sandbox game, but also a real-time strategy game with the ability to control other unit positions and soldiers during the battles, rather than letting things just happen with you reacting to them. And while you may not think it at first, Kingmakers also seems to have an actual plot where we time travel to the oddly specific year of 1400 in medieval Great Britain to prevent a future apocalyptic scenario. Apparently, we can fight for the English, Scottish, or the rebelling Welsh, with multiple possible endings being available based on our choices. It has been confirmed that in addition to the game allowing 4 players for co-op, Kingmakers will let each player customize their own personal army with different banners and colors. The developers of Redemption Road Games and their publisher Tiny Build have confirmed that Kingmakers will probably enter Steam Early Access in the first quarter of 2025, which was further confirmed during the 2024 OTK Winter Games Expo. Third on my list is Aloft, which I actually played the demo for, and it's definitely something that has a lot of potential. Developed by Astrolabe Interactive and published by Funcom, Aloft is supposed to be a cozy survival game where you can convert islands that have been pulled in by a huge cyclone into flying ships and literally steer them through the skies as you try to live on limited resources. Aloft has a very unique premise with what seem to already be solidified systems for progression, construction, and even weather effects that back the said premise up. I sort of feel feel like with its cute vibes and certain mechanics like mitigating fungi corruption while you steer, build, and survive, Aloft borrowed some inspiration from The Wandering Village, which was in itself a fantastic game developed by Strathon Studio. With a promised capacity for up to 8 players per instance, Aloft I think has a super high potential for enjoyment with friends or family, considering some of the demo systems seem to have a little bit of something for every type of player. Now, of course, at least from my personal experience with the demo, there were some kinks to be worked out in terms of animations or even controls, so I do hope continued player feedback can iron it all out during its early access, which is supposed to be public on January 15th, 2025, and for its full 1.0 release that hasn't been announced yet. Fourth on my list is well, I'm going to try to pronounce this, so don't give me too much of a hard time. Fourth on my list is PVKK, Planetenverteidigungskanonenkommandant. Okay, so hear me out. A Dutch friend of mine actually showed this one to me, and I think it's German, and when translated to English, the game title is PVKK, Planetary Defense Cannon Commander. The game is being developed by a small indie company of 7 game devs based in Germany called Bippenbits, which also developed a game called Domekeeper before this project. Based on what I assume is a brief gameplay trailer on its Steam page, Planetary Defense Cannon Commander looks like a weird blend of cozy and grim dark, with you basically being holed up in a massive cannon facility controlling one single cannon in coordination with what I assume is an entire planetary network of other cannon commanders to ward off invaders coming from space. Just something about this game's aesthetic and premise really captured my attention. I mean, you sleep, drink, eat, watch the news, basically live in this cannon you fire sometimes into the atmosphere, and then shit hits the fan. I just cannot wait to find out more about this game, which apparently had maybe 5 different meaningful endings, the plot with different difficulty settings according to the developers. Now, I did join the official Discord server, and the developers are considering late 2025 for a release window with a demo and a playtest preceding it before the full launch. One of the developers, Renee, stated that there wouldn't be probably no early access, and instead will do playtest on their Discord server with player feedback being gathered directly by them, and that a demo will be planned for 2025. It's expected that in addition to non-English localizations, the game will be supported on Linux and potentially Mac as well. Discussions by the developers are suggesting that the price of the full game could be anywhere between 15 to 30 euros or US dollars. VR support and multiplayer support are up in the air for PVKK, Planetenverteidigungskanonenkommandant. With so many prominent games coming out again in 2025, it feels like not a lot of people are talking about number 5 of my list, Mafia, Old Country. It feels like forever ago that my brother and I sat down to rent and played through the first Mafia game, after which we then played the Godfather game back in the early 2000s. 2 dark sequels later, a surprising prequel sequel for the Mafia franchise is now set for release sometime in the middle of 2025. This time, instead of following the events of Mafia 1 to 3, Mafia Old Country is a prequel set in early 20th century Sicily, and for those of you who are familiar with the history of the Cosa Nostra, it's probably going to be a hellish and gritty prequel that will more than live up to the reputation of the first 2 Mafia games, and hopefully take feedback from the lukewarm reception of the 3rd Mafia game. Mafia Old Country is developed by Hangar 13, the same studio that took over development of Mafia 3 after Mafia 1 and 2 developers Illusion Softworks or 2K Czech were delegated to a supporting role. Whispers of this prequel sequel were circulating back in 2022, and it was finally confirmed that it was in development with Unreal Engine 5. While there's no gameplay trailer as of this video, we do know at least story-wise that we will be playing 30-some years before the events of the first Mafia game from the perspective of a young soldato named Enzo Favara, who was reportedly a child laborer in the sulfur mines of Sicily, which are actually based on the Rio Carusu sulfur mines of Sicily. The trailer shows Enzo being initiated into the fictional Teresi crime family, itself an allusion to things mentioned in some public testimonies of American Mafia members in history, but also a subtle emphasis on how important the main story will be for the player perspective. Based on an interview with IGN, the gameplay will include open-world traversal with on-foot travel, car or horseback in a rural Sicilian environment that will also feature a continuous map. According to the same interview, the developers really got into nitty-gritty for a Sicilian Mafia story, with them actually visiting Sicily, talking to Sicilian historians, and even checking into Sicilian cultural practices, which excites me as I'm also a historian. I think really the only thing they could have done more is probably talk to the actual Sicilian Mafia, which I don't think they probably would have. Number 6 on my list is Wanderstop, which at first glance seems to be yet another typical cozy game, but interestingly it's being developed by indie company Ivy Road, which consists of Davey Wreden, the creator of the Stanley Parable, Carla Zimonja, a developer involved in Bioshock 2, Minerva's Den DLC, and Daniel Rosenfeld, also known as C418, the German composer and sound designer behind Minecraft. Wanderstop is due for release on March 11th, 2025. The description for Wanderstop is quite short, with it being described as a narrative-centric, cozy game about change and tea from the perspective of a fallen fighter named Alta, who manages a tea shop in a magical forest that serves passerby and customers. The trailer for it is super interesting, with it kind of going against the whole cozy narrative, especially with the character expressing her distaste for even being there, which is the whole premise of the game. With some gameplay footage, we can expect to grow, harvest, and make tea. We can also decorate the shop, clean the clearing, or just sit around. Honestly though, I think the main draw to me for Wanderstop, apart from the famed developers, is Davey Wreden talking about why he made this game, which I'll share in this video actually, and it kind of resonated with me quite a bit.
Hi, my name's Davey Wreden, and along with the rest of the team at Ivy Road, I've been creating Wanderstop, a narrative cozy game about making tea. You'll play as a former tournament fighter named Alta, who has to put her past aside in order to tend a charming shop and brew tea for its various customers. Years ago, I wrote and directed The Stanley Parable and The Beginner's Guide, and after finishing those games, I was unbelievably burnt out. I seriously thought I might never write another narrative for games ever again. And so I decided that I wanted to make a cozy game, something simple and peaceful that could heal me and restore balance to my life. And I discovered very quickly that I didn't actually know how to design a cozy game. And so suddenly the stress was piling on exactly the same as before. Something had to change. And so very slowly, piece by piece, I began taking elements of my burnout and my feelings of hopelessness, and I just put them right into the game's narrative. And then suddenly the coziness became this really interesting creative constraint. How do you tell a really unpleasant, uncomfortable story in a format designed around comfort? Typically in games like this, the protagonist is cheerfully excited to do the work. And so what if instead our protagonist absolutely did not want to be here? If she was broken and beaten down and starving for answers, could this charming little environment help heal her? And this became super interesting to me because that's what I had wanted. I had wanted to just do some pleasant work and then become all better. But healing is way more complicated than that. Healing is messy and it's bitter, and I want to know how to do it. I want to believe it's possible to leave your old self behind and become someone new, someone better than I am, someone more capable of rest and calm and inner peace. But God, it's so hard to do.
Seventh on the list is a first-person shooter game called Judas that has been in development hell since 2014, though it came out with an announcement trailer in 2022. Judas is being developed and published by indie company Ghost Story Games, which is led by Ken Levine, who had led the creation of the acclaimed Bioshock series. The plot of Judas takes place on Mayflower, a generation starship traveling through the void of space, carrying the last remnants of humanity to Proxima Centauri, the nearest star to Earth after Sol, our solar system's sun. The ship is run by three individuals: Tom, who wishes to preserve humanity in their original form; Nefertiti, his Nobel Prize-winning wife, who wants to transform humanity into machines free of flaw; and their adopted daughter, Hope, who wishes to quote-unquote delete herself from existence. Computers help these three individuals run the Mayflower, with all of humanity being trained to be model citizens, although Judas, who will play, rebels against the leadership. Whether Judas's rebellion itself leads to the Mayflower disintegrating or not, time is running out on the ship, and our only hope for survival is to make or break alliances with the mentioned three individuals. Inspirations for this game have included Legos, a reference to procedural generation or roguelike elements for Judas, talked about by Ken Levine in the past interviews, such as how when Judas dies, she gets reconstructed and players can improve her stats and abilities. Other intriguing gameplay details include how every decision players make with Judas will also have other characters respond to those choices, and the progression of Judas's story that could be unique per playthrough. While these are pretty interesting elements, I would still say Judas Judas definitely still has that Bioshock and space vibes too, just going off the trailers. Interestingly, the developers have stated that Judas will be a much more challenging experience than Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite. While we don't know the exact release date for Judas, it's been confirmed that Judas will fully release sometime during the first quarter of 2025 by the end of March 2025. Number 8 on my list is Killing Floor 3, and man, honestly, I can't believe there's going to be a third Killing Floor. For those who don't know what Killing Floor is, it's a first-person shooter with multiplayer encouraged, developed by Tripwire Interactive that have players survive through waves of Zeds, basically horrible medical experimental zombie abominations gone wrong because a certain company got greedy. Clearing each wave leads to a stronger wave until the final wave results in a randomized boss fight. You get points or currency after every match to upgrade your specialization or class, and then you repeat the gameplay matches to keep advancing. I remember playing the first Killing Floor in internet cafes in the early 2010s, and it was super popular partly because of the horrifying grittiness and gameplay, consisting of killing hundreds of Zeds, but also because of the pure fun mindlessness of it all. It was just a fun challenge to waste time on with some friends at the time, and then when the second Killing Floor came out almost 8 years after that, it felt like the sequel sort of toned down the first game's grittiness or some replayability aspects by making things easier while introducing a bunch of microtransactions. Now, almost a decade later, we have Killing Floor 3 that's due to come out in March 2025. What seems to be new compared to Killing Floor 2 are the expected new weapons, enemy types, and systems, such as an expanded progression system that might make the replay element of Killing Floor 3 more attractive than its predecessor. It's hard to say just based on the developer forum post or even the trailers themselves if Killing Floor 3 is something I would spend more than 12 or 15 hours on, honestly. The game promises to be even more gory with even more gadgets, mods, and ways to combat the Zeds that have also been apparently completely reworked to be far more challenging, according to developers who've also confirmed the game is still on Unreal Engine, and honestly, I'll probably just check it out for old time's sake with some leveled expectations, but I definitely can't lie about not being excited for potential return to the original Killing Floor in terms of challenge after so many years. Ninth on my list is Farthest Frontier, which has been on my wish list for close to 2 years at this point, mainly because I'm super wary of a lot of Steam games being in early access forever, particularly in the city building category. I love city building, I love management and simulation games, and I can spend hundreds of hours on them like an addict. I think recently Manor Lords hit the sweet spot for me with a lot of crave, especially with the rare introduction of real-time strategy with military units in its genre, and I still think Manor Lords will continue hitting that sweet spot, but the development updates from virtually one dev team aren't as fast as I would like, which is more than fine for such a gem. In the meantime though, I do want to try out other similar games that have had more updates to it, and since I first wishlisted Farthest Frontier, which is being developed by Crate Entertainment, the same creators of Grim Dawn, and that's certainly had quite a lot of updates, though it's still not out of early access. The game just looks fantastic and seems to be just as grounded as the playing perspective on Manor Lords, where it's not some sort of grand 4x scale and instead more intimate and involved in managing and growing what you have. And some of the systems I've seen from gameplay videos definitely remind me of another game called Banished, so that's another plus, although the user interface seems a little dated. I am hoping Farthest Frontier hits its 1.0 update and fully releases in 2025 after being delayed a couple of times. Developers of Crate Entertainment have stated that due to a combination of more work needing to be done and bigger games in the holiday season potentially stifling their own sales, Farthest Frontier will fully launch in the spring of 2025. Last, but definitely not least on my list is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which I am super excited for. Sometimes I just randomly think about The Legend of Dragoon from the ancient year 2000 and how awesome that game was, and since then, I feel like not a lot of turn-based RPGs have captured my attention or imagination as much as that game did. I sense that Clair Obscur Expedition 33, also a turn-based JRPG advertised with real-time mechanics, such as quick-time events like The Legend of Dragoon, might just bring me back fully into the genre once again. The developers state that you can dodge, parry, and counter in real time, chain combos by mastering attack rhythms, and even target enemy weak points using a free aim system. The game looks very sleek and breathtaking graphically from what I've seen of the trailers. The environmental gameplay promises hidden quests, hidden areas, and other secrets for players to explore, with recruitable companions that can be found during your journey. The synopsis of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 explains the game's title and is pretty intriguing actually. Once a year, the paintress wakes up and paints a cursed number upon her monolith. Everyone in the world of that age number just turns to smoke and fades away. So year by year, that number keeps ticking down. And Expedition 33 is, I assume, a party of 33-year-olds who are on a suicide mission to try to destroy this paintress so she can't obliterate entire age groups. The build systems hinted at so far for your party's characters that can be customized, including their gear, skills, stats, and even synergies, sound like what Dragon's Dogma should have honestly had for its party system, which I felt at times did not meet my personal expectations. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is being developed by indie game studio Sandfall Interactive with Unreal Engine 5, and what's really surprising is that this game is going to actually be their first as a team of developers. The game will be published by Kepler Interactive, which has published games in the past such as Scorn and Pacific Drive, and while we don't have a specific date for this JRPG just yet, it's been stated that it will release sometime in the summer of 2025. Anyway, those are the top 10 games I am looking forward to playing that I feel like not a lot of other people have been discussing compared to the more mainstream ones. If you guys enjoyed this video and want similar ones that cover the gaming sphere, please subscribe to the channel as that does directly support my efforts. If you'd like to see a top 10 games list or maybe even a monthly list of games coming out that are mainstream or just generally known, let me know down in the comments below, and I super appreciate you spending your precious time with me. Big shout out to my Patreon supporters for continuing to support my dreams, and if you also want perks such as access to a private channel in our community server and an early preview of all videos I'm releasing, definitely check out my Patreon. Until next time though, stay safe and have fun.